There's a tragic beauty in Ghibli films. These hypnotic stories blend the mundane with the magical, tangling the ordinary with the profound until the boundary between them dissolves entirely. Fundamentally, Ghibli films are stories of kindness and wonder. So why then do they evoke such a heavy sense of longing and quiet melancholy? Why do they linger within us like some fuzzy memory we can't quite grasp? Ghibli tells its stories through characters wrapped in a cloak of innocence. Often, this takes the form of child protagonists, like Chihiro in Spirited Away, or Kiki in Kiki's Delivery Service, Satsuki and Mei in Totoro, all wide-eyed and unguarded, stepping into worlds they don't yet understand. Other times, the protagonist is older, but carries an inconvenient purity, a quiet resistance to the cynicism of adulthood, like Sophie in House Moving Castle, or Jiro in The Wind Rises. In every case, innocence is the clay from which Ghibli molds its characters, and with it, Ghibli offers an open hand, an invitation. Come with us. Step into this strange and magical world. Hold this innocent hand and you'll be safe. Like water, we take the shape of the character Ghibli gives us. Chihiro's fear becomes our own, her disorientation ours. We take upon the same innocent confusion, the same hesitation, the same childlike instinct to retreat. Her parents, the pillars of her world, are transformed into pigs before her own eyes. Her name, the most basic marker of identity, is taken from her. The world itself becomes unfamiliar, shifting, bound by rules we don't yet understand, and in this way, we are returned to a state we have long outgrown, a time when we didn't know the way things worked, when everything was new and frightening and enormous. Innocence. And this is the magic of Ghibli. It disarms us. We enter these films as adults guarded by the cynicism of experience, only to find those defenses quietly peeled away. And once we are made vulnerable, once we are small again, Ghibli moves in. Not to harm us, but to remind us of something we've forgotten. And so we follow. We step into these worlds with a kind of quiet trust, shielded by the promise of innocence, protecting us from anything dangerously terrible. But innocence is fragile, and as we journey deeper, something shifts, a weight begins to settle in, a longing for something we can't quite name. In Totoro, we follow Satsuki and Mei as they navigate their new home, neighboring a magical forest. But somewhere along the way, we find ourselves treading water over deep and dark seas. The girl's mother is sick, a kind of sickness beyond little Satsuki and Mei's understanding. All we need to know, all we can know, is that Mum isn't home. She's sick. And Dad says she'll be home soon. But Dad has been saying that a long time. And Dad is at work, but the doctors rang to say Mum is very sick and can't come home this weekend. But Gran said the corn will make her feel better. And so Mei clutches the corn to her chest and sets off down the road, a road that stretches endlessly through tall grass and sunburned fields. The cicadas scream and Mei is swallowed by the winding paths. And by the time they find her sandal by the pond, we realize Totoro was never really a story of magical forests. It was a story of two little girls running from something they don't yet understand. And we ache. We ache because Mei thought the corn would make her mother better. We ache because Satsuki doesn't know how to tell Mei that Mum's probably not coming home. There's a quiet horror in this story. A heaviness in Satsuki and Mei's tears. Two innocent and fragile things caught in the rip, pulled by the currents of the deep. Unable to comprehend their impending tragedy, but cast into it nonetheless, Satsuki and Mei confront the impermanence of life in our world. The weight of their tragedy is cushioned by the beauty of their childhood innocence, which manifests in the wonder of Totoro and the yellow cat bus. In this dream, Satsuki and Mei find shelter from the cruel and unyielding world awaiting them. And for a moment, Ghibli lets us hide in there with them. And there, from a place of warm safety, Ghibli invites us to look, to peer into the abyss, to remember that which we have learned to forget each and every waking day, that all before us is impermanent, that all we treasure will be lost to time, and the world will carry on indifferent to the fading infinity that is our own consciousness. And then there is Seita and Satsuko from Grave of the Fireflies, whose story does not end in rescue, who are not protected by the soft hands of magic, who, like Satsuki and Mei, are children grasping at hope, but in a world that does not bend to their innocence. If Totoro is the kind lie we tell our children, that spirits will guide them home, Grave of the Fireflies is the truth, that sometimes there is no home left to return to. In The Wind Rises, Jiro dreams of flight, of beauty, of creating something that will touch the sky. But the sky does not care. The wind rises and the world pulls him forward, towards war, towards loss, towards a dream that will destroy itself in its very making. He too is caught in the rip, just like the children, pulled out by the deep. And this is what lurks behind Ghibli's beauty, a deadly whisper that grows louder the longer we listen. An echo that says, nothing lasts, that we are always running out of time. And just as we begin to wake from modernity's spiritual amnesia, just as we begin to remember this forgotten law, just as we reach out to grab that truth, the magic of Ghibli itself slips through our fingers. The innocence of Satsuki and Mei was momentary and will fade like the setting sun. The innocence of Chihiro will be lost as she settles into the adolescence of her new home. The innocence with which Ghibli invited us along this journey was itself another illusion, fragile and temporary. And as the happy credits roll, we are left alone with the quiet ache of this impermanence, a fragile dream lost like tears in rain. But something strange happens. Having remembered this ugly truth, we don't leave a Ghibli film feeling terrified. We don't walk away in existential crisis. Though Ghibli stories carry the weight of loss, they leave behind a soft imprint on our fragile hearts that is unmistakably warm. It is not terror, not the paralyzing fear of our own mortality, but something gentler. A whisper that reminds us, yes, all things must pass, and that is why they matter. There is a moment in Spirited Away when Chihiro at last remembers Haku's name. The magic that binds him breaks, and the two tumble through the sky, hand in hand, as the weight of forgotten things lifts. It's a moment of triumph, but tinged also with loss. Haku is a water spirit whose river no longer exists. It's been filled with apartments. A part of what kept him under Umbaba's spell is that he had no home to return to. And so Haku is saved, but the past cannot be reclaimed. Even as he is freed, he begins to slip away. By the time Chihiro turns back from beyond the river separating the spirit world from ours, he's already gone. This is Ghibli's final, most delicate truth. All things must pass. Innocence, magic, even love. None are immune to time. And yet this impermanence does not come as terror, but as longing. We do not mourn for Chihiro. We do not grieve for what is lost. Instead, we are shown why it was precious in the first place. In My Neighbor Totoro, Satsuki and Mei's childhood innocence is fleeting, but that does not make it meaningless. Their laughter in the rain, their joy in the fields, the whispered rustle of Totoro snoring, these moments are no less real for their impermanence. The weight of time gives them meaning. In The Wind Rises, Jiro builds something beautiful, knowing it will be used for war, knowing it will be destroyed. Still he builds, still he dreams. And when at last he stands amongst the wreckage of his creations, he does not look away. He watches the wind rise and lets it carry him forward. This is the magic of Ghibli. It does not deny the abyss, nor does it plunge us into despair. Instead, it invites us to sit with it, to let it pass through us. And so, in Ghibli, innocence isn't something to shed off so you can finally live in the real world. Neither is it something to mourn or grieve. Rather, innocence is a powerful way of seeing, a profound way of knowing, one Ghibli asks us to periodically return to when the outside world suffocates all sense of feeling and meaning out of us. And this is so starkly refreshing from depictions of innocence in Western media, which paint innocence as something to be lost, to be destroyed, and never reclaimed. Think of Toy Story, which casts a binary between the worlds of children and adults. The toy's place in Andy's world severed when he becomes a man. Think of how characters like Simba, or even someone like Luke Skywalker, these guys must accept the responsibility of adulthood to conquer the evils of their worlds. And the cost of that is the wonder and the spirit that defined those characters in the beginnings of their arcs. By contrast, Ghibli does not reduce innocence to any type of lifespan of childhood. Chihiro grows up, but she never stops believing in magic. Jiro confronts war, but he never stops believing in his dreams of flights and his time in the sun. Innocence is, for Ghibli, an ever-present way of seeing that calls us to remember, and through it, Ghibli shows us what peace could look like in a world that's determined to extinguish it. Innocence in Ghibli is not naivety, it's not ignorance, it's a quiet strength, the ability to see beauty despite sorrow, to dream despite hardship. And this is why Chihiro does not break down when she's thrown into the spirit world, why Nausicaa never gives up on her belief in harmony, why Totoro exists not as a fantasy to be outgrown, but as something Mei and Satsuki and we can carry forward in our hearts. In a world that tells us to harden, to let go, Ghibli gently reminds us, there is another way. These films do not offer resolution, nor do they shield us from the ache of existence. Instead, they teach us how to bear it. They remind us that wonder and grief are not opposites, but twins, that the beauty of life is inseparable from its fragility. And so, the films end. Their dreams dissolve. Chihiro faces up to her new home, her new school. The pig flies into the horizon, no longer running away from that which he cannot name, but running toward it. The credits roll, and we too must return to the real world. But something lingers, some small, quiet thing. A whisper in the wind, a glimmer in the rain. A warmth that, just for a moment, makes us stop. Sit. Look. Feel. Remember. Live. Thank you for watching, my friends. And as always, have a very good day.